Happy Pride, everybody. I am so excited to bring you this panel. Out of all the panels that they could pick me, this was by far one of my favorites. It's called Be Gay, Do Crimes. My name is Eric. You also know me as the boy with the raven tattoo on Instagram. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm so excited to bring you these authors. We have 5 authors who have written these amazing thrillers and mysteries. So let's meet them now.
Hi, I'm Nikessa Thea. My pronouns are she, her, and I wrote the Prohibition era Dead Girls, which comes out in June. It's about a tiny, tired lesbian who is extorted into solving crime. Thanks. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Dinamizio, and I wrote, my pronouns are he, him, and my book is Burn It All Down, which comes out by the time this airs, it will have already come out. Anyway, it is a buddy comedy revenge caper starring a mother-son duo who both just have really shitty taste in men. And after their most recent blow-ups, or their most recent relationships blow up, they embark on a wine-fueled crime spree. And I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Wendy Hurd. I wrote She's Too Pretty to Burn. It came out on March 30th, and it's about 2 girls who get roped into a shady underground San Diego art scene.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Mia P. Manansala. My pronouns are she, her, and I wrote Arsenic and Adobo. It came out May 4th of this year. And it is a Filipino-American themed culinary cozy mystery. For those of you not familiar with cozies, they're basically Hallmark movies with dead bodies. This one follows Lila Macapagal, a young Filipino-American woman born and raised in a small town, moves into Chicago to try to make big things happen for herself. She fails utterly. She's tragically straight, so like there were reasons for that. She moves back home to kind of like fix her aunt's failing restaurant. Reconnects with her high school sweetheart, but instead of like a cute like second chance at love story, he is the vindictive town food critic who's been trying to get her restaurant shut down. Mid-meal, mid-review, he drops dead, and guess who becomes the main suspect? So she has to spend the rest of the book clearing her name and also saving her family's restaurant.
I'm PJ Vernon. The book is Bathhouse, reverse mirror. Bathhouse. It's pitched as Gone Girl with Gaze and Grinder. My pronouns are he, him. Pitched as Gone Girl with Gaze and Grinder about a young gay man who will do absolutely anything to keep a very, very dangerous indiscretion from his loving, perfect husband. Out June 15th.
All right, awesome. Welcome, everybody. So let's start off with an icebreaker. I thought this would be fun to play a little game. As we all know, it's Marry, Shag, Kill. So we're going to pick 3 protagonists or characters that we find typically in these thriller mysteries. I just want to hear your opinions on what your relationship status would be with these characters. We have the unreliable narrator, the shady spouse, and of course, the villain. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I think that obviously we have to kill the unreliable spouse. Because that's what happens to him all the time. I think I'd marry the villain and then shag the unreliable narrator. And no, I'm not taking questions about this at this time.
Okay.
I'll go, continuing the alphabetical thing. I'm going to say the first thing that jumped out at me is that I would really want to shag the villain because I feel like it would be good.
Okay.
And then the other 2 are like a toss-up. I'm like still, I feel like I could go either way, but I'll say marry the shady love interest because maybe the shadiness is just imagined, and then kill the unreliable narrator. I would agree.
I suggest marrying the unreliable narrator because, you know, it will give you a lot of conflict, things to study, and you can do a lot of investigation, you know, a little Mr. and Mrs. Smith action. Ultimately, you get rid of them and then return to the villain, which, as you know, we were always interested in the entire time.
I like that.
See, I'm kind of torn between like the way Nikessa and Nicholas put it, because like my immediate instinct is like, obviously you shag the villain, but at the same time I'm like, I don't know, like if you marry the villain, you know what you're getting into, right? Like you like you can't complain, right? Whereas like, man, I don't like that unreliable narrator gaslighting me into thinking I'm crazy. I don't need that. Like that one's dead. But the other two, like those are toss up, because like a shady love interest doesn't, you know, like that shadiness can be on different levels, and it might be something I'm down with. I mean, like this is be gay, do crimes, right? So like, who knows? It depends.
Mia, me and you are on the exact same page from start to finish. Like number one, I think like every single person is unreliable, so I'm like super suspicious of someone who calls themselves like an unreliable narrator. Don't trust it. Kill. Like done. Shady love interest. Like I already know I'm gonna have like crazy body chemistry with someone who's bad for me. So shag the hell out of them for sure. And then get out. And I think I'm going to marry the villain. I'm going to marry the villain because villains, I feel like, have follow through. And like, that's something I admire in other people. I'm trying to improve for myself as well. So I respect
and
that.
Villains do interesting things. You know, they're not boring. So you wouldn't have a boring life. Yeah.
True.
They've got a 5-year strategic plan always.
Yeah, they do.
Take over the tri-state area.
Okay. All right. I love everyone's opinions. All right. All right. So let's get down to your books. I kind of want to know what inspired you to write your book in particular, and were there any moments in your personal life that you included in the books? And let's start with PJ.
Oh no! So I'm gonna go last the whole time. So what is I wish there would be like some kind of like amazing, you know, philosophical thing that I could say inspired it, but really just every single time I was like on the way to meet a Grindr hookup, I was, you know, like this person could kill me. We'll find out, because I'm not actually gonna like adjust my behavior or not follow through on it. So I was just sort of like, I don't know why am I okay with making myself so vulnerable? And that's sort of, there's a seed of a story there. I thought, and then I kind of just wanted to have like a call is coming from inside the house moment, but just with like Grindr distancing, like the killer is like 2 feet away, you know, or something like that. But as far as your other question about if there's anything personal that went into the book, besides all of that, I had a blast sort of playing with, I get busted by technology all the time. So my husband and I were in a long distance relationship. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go like eat lunch at Whole Foods. I'll, you know, let you know how it was. And I didn't know Facebook Messenger like started geo tagging our messages. And he was like, oh, you're at Wendy's. So I was like, yes, I am. But also I feel like I could have been doing something else horrible. And I'm going to write that down. Go with it.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and like, honestly, I would love to say that, you know, there's a bunch of my personal life where I did a bunch of art crimes and melted people into evil murder statues, but not really, not personally and not on camera. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I kind of had always wanted to write about a lot of crime installations. Like I got kind of fascinated with different artists who do these big installations that were really disruptive to people living their lives. Like they'd block the roads, or they'd, you know, Banksy would go into the zoo and like paint all the zoo animals and stuff like that. So I kind of thought, what if but murder, you know?
I mean, like mine's like pretty simple. I really love reading cozy mysteries. It's my mom's favorite genre. She's the one that got me into it, but I never saw people like me in the pages. It's a very not diverse, inclusive world, shall we say. It's getting better now, right? But you know, it's 2021. It's taken some time. And I just wanted to write the book I always wanted to see on the shelves. It's how much of it is in me? Like, it's like an alternate version of me, where instead of like a broke hood, like chick from Chicago, it's like, oh, she was raised, you know, around like a majority white, suburbanish, like small Midwestern town. And, you know, I didn't really have a Filipino community growing up. I only had my family to rely on. How different would I be if I had that kind of support system, which is loving and smothering? And like, what parts of them are my life? How about like basically anything negative the aunties say? I was like, oh, that's something that was said to me. Like, like there's like a line where because like in a lot of Filipino, like we have multiple godparents. Like I have 3 godmothers and 3 godfathers. So like my character has 3 godmothers. Yeah, we have too many aunties. Ooh, next book, too many aunties. I'm gonna like, like she walks into the room and she's like, "Oh, you get bigger every time I see you," and it's like, "I love you too, thanks." So like things like that.
So I love this question, and I feel like I set myself up for this question because literally, like page 1, it says like for mom. So this is good practice because I'm sure I'm going to have to answer it a ton. So yeah, I think I've always had the idea of the a Gilmore Girls type single mom relationship with a gay son in it, because that was very much my life growing up, and I like loved Gilmore Girls, loved all those like Natalie Portman movies where she was like the daughter of a single mom. And I feel like that was like such a great relationship that, we saw a lot of like in the early 2000s for some reason. And I was like, well, like, where is the gay son and the single mom? Because that's like the ultimate, like not just with my mom and myself, but with other like gays that I know who were raised by single women. So that was kind of always the seed. And then it wasn't until writing a couple of other manuscripts that went nowhere that I figured out like what, like I knew the characters because they were so autobiographical. But then when I figured out like what I wanted the plot to be, that's when the fiction started coming in, because I have never, committed any felonies, nor has my mother. The worst we did shaving cream a house one time. And that was like, but aside from that, so yeah, it was like a very mix. It started with like a kernel of the autobiographical, and especially because like, I feel like when like anyone who dates men, your late teens and early 20s is usually a period of just like the worst assholes in the world, because they're just like the most attractive to you at that time. So yeah, like all of that stuff is autobiographical, but then it just gets extremely, made up and fun and popcorny. So
when I was starting to like pitch this book and like create this book, I always like read the advice that like it said like if you have like any relatable, like if you're like related to the plot anyway, you should totally put that into your letter. And I was like, yep, I'm definitely a crime solver from 1926. My time travel thing is right off the screen. It's right here. It's great. No, there's like no like part of myself. Although my mom, if you like ask my mom, she will say that Lou is me and I'm Lou, which is wrong. She's way cooler than I am in every way possible. But I based the major crime in this book off Jack the Ripper, and I wanted it just to be like really cool and really 1920s and like really black. So that's where the inspiration for this one came from. Mm-hmm. And really, really gay too. Really, really gay.
But the dancing, you're also a dancer.
Yeah, and like my mom was saying it, and she's like, "So you really like writing dances, right?" I went, "Yeah." So
I'm stoked for the clothes. The way that you talk and tweet about like clothes, I'm just like,
oh my god, thank you. The clothes have been my favorite part. Absolutely.
Yes, bring on the fashions. Bring them on. All right, so let's talk about your characters. So your main characters are off doing these crimes now. Likability wise, do you want them to be likable? Do you want us to, I guess, shade them a little bit for their messiness?
I can start just because, like, again, I think out of everyone, since I wrote a cozy, I'm the one who was most constrained by the idea of likability. Because like these are meant to be like Hallmark, and because cozies are always series, you are meant to build like a relatable character that readers will want to follow book after book, because it's meant to be like a comforting beach read. And so I went for more relatable than likable necessarily, because one, I hate the term likable because I feel like it mainly only refers to women. Two, I don't know. Like, again, like the messiness that is necessary to have a character that's interesting enough to grow, and like you need them to make bad decisions, or else it's just like, oh wow, they're just finding and making the best, and then they're never in any danger. Like, it would be so boring. So for me, so like my character is 25 years old. Sorry, Nikessa, because at 25, I feel like that's the age where like you are like you're technically a grown ass adult, but like I didn't know what adulting was at 25. I don't know what adulting is now, and I'm gonna be 35. You know, like but you also think you know everything at that age, and you are making some of like. You're like fresh out of college, you're making like these really messy ass decisions because you're trying to find your place in the world. So I felt like she could be forgivable because she's just young enough. She's obviously struggling to find her place in the world. And she is self-aware enough in some ways where she knows like this is a really stupid decision. I know trying to get back together with my ex is a really dumb decision, but I also just got cheated on my fiance with our neighbors, plural. So why not give it a shot? And you know, so that's when I say tragically, you know, like it's like you said, dating men in your early 20s is messy. And so I felt like that's at least relatable. Even if you're like yelling at her, like, girl, no, why are you walking into that room? Why are you doing this? You can at least be like, well, I mean, this girl's got room to grow. I hope she lives through this so I can read book 2. You know, like that's what I was going for.
I would agree with that. I'm coming from like a slightly different place. Actually, I'm on a double-edged sword because I always say that I don't care if people don't like Lou, but then I absolutely need you to like her. I love her so much, and you have to like her, or else I'm going to be so sad. I'm going to cry about, like, honestly. But my main goal was to like try to build like a real human instead of like a strong female character or a likable character. She doesn't have to be either of those things. I feel like she has a lot of traits that are so bad for her. Like she's kind of lazy, she's really stubborn. All she wants to do is kiss her girlfriend and do nothing, which is such a big mood.
Like,
but
right?
yeah, honestly, but she also like loves really furiously. She loves spending time with her sister. She loves spending time with her girlfriend and her brother. I just tried to make her like a real person that people could see see themselves in. And yeah, so that's what I tried to do with Lou, and I love her. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I'll go. I don't care if people necessarily like my characters. I don't know. I agree with you, Mia. I'm not a fan of like, you know, sympathetic characters or likable characters. I think every single human being does very likable things at times and very unlikable things at times. And so for me, I care about the empathy factor and whether the reader, like you're saying, like relates to, you know, the mess. Like you're talking about, like, should I go back and hook up with my ex-boyfriend? Well, no, I'll scream at the character on the book, but like inside my head, I'm like, I did that lots of times. And it becomes very relatable. I look at like the behavior of like, in Bathhouse, like an addict, right? So when someone's consuming drugs, it's objectively for most folks not a sympathetic, likable act that they're doing, but that's a human. And what circumstances, you know, brought them to this point? What lived experiences? And do we root for them? Do we want them to overcome it? In Bathhouse, we open, you know, from page 1. The protagonist Oliver is cheating, which is so objectively, you know, for so many folks, unlikable and unsympathetic. But very quickly they're confronted with the question of, does he deserve to die for it? And that's a question they'd have to answer, you know, for themselves. But sympathy is great if you feel it at times, but it's not something I don't know, I particularly care about as a reader or a writer.
I feel like we're all on the same page with like we don't care about likability. Like we just want to craft interesting characters. And I feel like happens all the time. Like when I talk to other writers, like it's weird that like, because my experience was very much like I wrote the book, like the first draft, my characters were like way less likable than they are in the final version. And it was just like a constant note that I got was like, oh my God, like these two are just frustrating. And like, where's the remorse or and it's like, do you not see like the first chapter where they're dating like the worst men in the world? Like, how about we hate on them? But anyway, so like, because I went into it very much like, I don't need them to be like, well, they've already been fucked over. This is their chance to like get revenge. And different. So like I would agree with everyone who's spoken so far that like it's not like in my mind when I'm writing, it always ends up being a concern after like an editor or a beta reader or someone has read it and like they raise it and it ends up being, and like a lot of times it does, like I think in my case it did make the story a little better because instead of having two total like nightmare humans, I have nightmare humans who ultimately learn from their mistakes. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing because I think I sometimes I wonder if it's as like essential of a quality for characters as everyone seems to think it has to be.
Yeah, it's kind of like that niceness question. Like, is it really that interesting to just read, 300 pages of a character just being nice?
Right.
Like, wouldn't that be so boring, And so it's interesting because we have pressure to make our characters likable, but I feel like if we went all the way and we're like, okay, fine, meet Bob, he loves to, you know what I mean? Like, and people would be really bored with that. So it's always really tough, I think, to know, when you're writing, start hearing the expectations of readers in your head, and you're just wondering, you got to like kind of pull away from that and just, yeah.
Okay. All right. So now let's do the flip side. So we have your main characters. Now let's talk about your antagonist, the villain, the bad guy. Is it easier writing the bad guy? And do any of you guys have fun doing or writing about the bad guy?
Well, I didn't focus on like my bad guy all that much. Well, it's a murder mystery, so part of it is finding the mystery. Yeah, it's a whole thing. But like in my first couple of drafts of this book, there were like huge sections with him, and we're just trying to get into his head. And I did so much like murder research. I'm like, I'm gonna watch American Psycho because that's like the darkest movie I can find. I feel like that really helped inform what I was thinking and like where I wanted to go with the story. But ultimately, I cut them because it's Lou's story, not the villain's story. And she needs to take center stage in her own story.
I feel like with villains, it's like not that I have a ton of experience, writing villains because in my book, they're definitely kind of background, past tense type characters. But one thing just around the concept of writing villains that I've always found really interesting is that I feel like likability sometimes comes to them because like sometimes you can get a note where it's like, what made them this way? And like, what's their origins? And like now with all of this, like, there's such a trend of like villain origin stories and how like, they used to be good and they would have been good if like they didn't get like shat on when they were like 9 years old or something. like the Jim Carrey Grinch movie, for instance, when they had to give the Grinch like that weird like cut himself shaving thing to explain why he was so miserable. So I feel like villains are another ones who get trapped by in a weird way, by the likability thing.
Yeah, it's so weird that there has to be like you're saying, like the origin story and like making making them likable or understandable. Because now, like, isn't there like a Cruella movie, like the Disney like 100? Like she literally wanted to kill dogs. He wanted to murder and wear puppies. Like,
right.
What happened in her past? And I'm going to be like, yes, Emma Stone. I'm okay with it. Like not everyone needs a redemption arc. Not every, like you don't have to. Like some people are just like terrible people, and like that's okay. I don't know. It's like I love a good villain, but sometimes it's like unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again for me, because I have to speak from the cozy experience, like I can't really get too dark with my villainy. Like obviously, like oddly enough, like the victim was also kind of the villain. But I had to be careful not to make it too like cartoonishly. Like yes, like I'm kind of glad that this fictional character is dead, but at the same time, you're like there had to be some depth because like it's a human life, and I wanted there to be some nuance to the reason this person was killed. And the same thing with like the killer, because again, like to be like really cliche, it's like that person killed him because they thought they were right. They were like there's zero remorse. They're like, no, that person deserved to die because of these reasons, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. And it's just so I think it's fun because you do get to go. I like the idea of having, if it's a regular person and not like a super villain, knowing what drove them to do that. Yes, I find that interesting because just like your protagonist, you want your villain to be an actual feel real, like a fully realized person, and not like, you know, a mustache twirling, like, you know, all puppies must die kind of a thing.
Real villains are terrifying. Like, human beings are the most terrifying thing to me I can imagine. Don't necessarily believe in ghosts, but home invasions and people scare the hell out of me. But I don't know, like, for me, villains are just, they're such it's so much fun to write them. So much so, and so much easier, that I'm just like, I'll just make sure I hinge a novel on the protagonist behaving badly, and, you know, we'll navigate it from there. They're a blast for a reason. And I don't know, like, as like a queer kid, you know, growing up in, you know, South Carolina, like Christian private school, like the whole whatever you're imagining is it. You know, it's very, I always kind of related to villains, because I was just like, that's who I was told I was, like, all the time, right? Like, I'm a villain, I'm bad, I, you know, do bad things by having the audacity to exist on the planet, how I am. And so, you know, I look at, like, talking about Disney characters like Ursula, you know, and like these, yes, like these
queer
like,
icons.
Yes.
amazing. She's like, I will become this, like, you know, whatever society wants me to be for like one hot second, because I have to put you in my, like, people soul garden beneath the seas. Like, and that's empowering. I just love her so much.
So let's talk about the writing process itself. There's, you know, for mystery and thrillers, I feel like there's the slow burns, and then there's the fast-paced thrillers. Can you talk about the process on how you decide how you want to tell your story, and then what dictates the speed of it?
This is such a good question, because with this book in particular, it was something I thought about a lot, whereas past manuscripts that I wrote, it wasn't even on my mind. And maybe that's why they failed. But with this one, I was very actively thinking about the pace and about my own experience while writing. Like, I was like, every 2 pages, I was checking in with myself, like, am I having fun? Like, do I find this interesting? Is this moving like fast enough for me? And like, constantly just like holding myself to the standard of, like, if it wasn't even holding my attention, then I just deleted whatever it was and just tried to write something more, you know. And so that's probably how the stakes ended up getting so high, because it was totally at the top of my mind. So I ended up with a book that has like a lot of short chapters, and you know, a lot of kind of decisions that just escalate into destruction and madness and crazy things. Yeah, for me, it was definitely, I was like hyper focused on the pacing.
Okay.
Yeah, not to be pretentious or anything, but to quote Stephen Sondheim, he always says, "Content dictates form," and that's something I really take to heart. Because I'm a Sondheim stan. Let's talk about that. So with Dead Dead Girls specifically, I'm not sure whether it's like it's okay. So it's not really slow. I think it's more of a fast, like paced, like thriller. So I was always trying to make sure like the beats lined up, and like the chapters were short, and like we were keeping moving, and like I like ending my chapters on like something that makes me want to come back and write, which will probably make you guys want to come back and read. And it's just like keeping myself engaged with the book really helps. And then hopefully that keeps the readers engaged with the book.
Okay. So I think like Nicholas, right? So my secret, I guess, is like short chapters, really, because like cozy, like as the name implies, cozies are meant to be more like comfortable. I don't know. It's such a weird paradox. We're like, yes, all these dead bodies. Let me like snuggle in for like a warm, comfortable night. But like that's what it, you know. And so like mine is not like, it's not like like British crime mysteries tend to be like almost like a weird stroll. You know, like if you think like of Midsummer Murders and stuff, like those are a little bit more. Mine's like a city walk, right? So like it's not a thriller pace, but you do like oh, your heart rate's, you know, like you're gonna want to keep turning. Well, hopefully you want to keep turning, like I write them short enough and I kind of like end it in a like each chapter with like a question or something happening to make you be like, well, I mean, this first chapter went so quickly, I might as well just keep on going to the next one. And so it's more, I control the pacing that way, as opposed to big suspenseful things or lots of danger, because that's not necessarily what my readers are looking for. So it's a different kind of technique that I would have to employ compared to other people.
On the technique front, like absolutely, like keeping readers uncomfortable and all those sorts of things and high stakes, and making sure the characters dictate the pacing, certainly in how they're feeling and absorbing what's going on. But just from like a craft perspective and ending on dramatic beats, one thing that I really love doing is just I finish a chapter and then I'm like, okay, well I'm a storyteller, so I have this compulsion to draw a conclusion and some sort of arc always, and trying to fight against that. So making sure that everything's staggered, that I'm setting up, I'm not ending something, not ending a scene necessarily in chapter 1, but I'm ending it at the beginning of chapter 2, and then starting a new scene in chapter 2 and ending it in chapter 3 and setting up a new question. And I think as far as like beats at the end, just deleting the last sentence. And rereading it and seeing like, is that a better beat to end on? Like delete the last paragraph. Is that a better beat to end on? Delete the last scene. And if you need it, push it over to the next chapter. But seeing how it reads when I end it sooner than I think, intuitively on first draft pass, it should be ended has been a lot of fun. And I think made scenes a lot stronger.
That's really interesting, PJ. Love that.
It feels like cheating. I'm just like, it ends on a great beat because I just deleted until it ended where I felt like it was good, not because I had an eye for it.
Cool. Yeah, I always think of it like I'm up until the midpoint. It's like a roller coaster where you're like up to the top. You know what I mean? And like along the way, you're like planting all these bombs, and then like it goes down in the second half of the book, and it's like like screaming, and then all the bombs are going off. So like I always try to picture that in my head. For some reason, that imagery really helps me. So it's like really tense and suspenseful, and then it's like all the bombs you planted are kind of going off and everything is going wrong, and sort of like that.
Love that.
Literally in your books.
Literally.
Yeah. But I love that idea, PJ, because I mean, like, I guess, like, like what what readers get is a finished product that's been revised and revised, sometimes over years. And if you read it and you're like, oh wow, this is like so effortless. Like, if only like the good ones make it look effortless, PJ. Most of the time, it's just like a lot of hard work, and then a really, really great editor as well.
Yes, editors.
Shout out to our editors.
I know, right?
None of our books looked like this. It turned out.
You were so smart.
All right, next question. Let's do. So the name of the panel is "Be Gay, Do Crimes," and another important element of either thrillers or mysteries is the plot, which often revolves around the crime of some sort. How did you develop the plot of your stories, and do you plan way in advance or go and roll with the punches?
Okay. So I wrote Dead Dead Girls as a National Novel Writing Month novel. So that was during my senior year of university. So that was like, I didn't really have any huge plans for it. I was just like, I want to write about 1920s lesbians. Let's do it. And then it turned into this. But that was like waking up at 4 a.m., writing for an hour, then going to school, then doing my schoolwork, then coming home, and then doing my homework, and then like writing for another hour before I went to bed. And it was exhausting, and I can't do that anymore, which sucks. I guess I'm too old now. No matter, I always try to like write a whole draft before I plot, which is not the smartest way to do anything, especially writing, because like I'll get stuck, then I'll restart, then I'll like try to plot a little, then I'll like start again, and then I'll like, stop again. I'll be like, okay, I can't do this. I'm done with this project. Then 10 minutes later, I'll be like, but that's a good idea, so let's put that in my plot. And then I'll like pull out my little notebook and be like, yep, it's going in the notebook. Then I list the notebook, and it's a whole thing. I do like plotting, but I like the ability to like write stuff out more, because like if you plot too much, then you're just gonna get walked into the plot, and then you won't be able to write.
Like just like stabs in my heart every time Nick. I'm just like, oh yeah, I was like in my senior year of college. I was like, like you don't even want to know what I like. Oh,
Yeah,
so not ready.
Yeah, it's like 21.
And now she's like a decade younger than me. She's like, I'm too old for this. I'm like, I've been ready for bed for the past hour. How dare you even put that on this? But so for me, I'm a bit of a plotter, but I do the thing where like I plot out like the major scenes. Like I like having the guidelines to know like what I'm building towards. Like I know people who will do like 13, 14, 20 page outlines, and I'm like, oh no, thank you. Like that's a little too much for me. But I like being organized, or at least I like pretending that I have control and can be organized. So like I'll have a beginning and an end, and I'll have like these high points that I build towards, and like some like a general idea of what I want like the character arc to be, and then I use that. But I feel like you don't have like a lot of people feel like, oh, if I plot, I'm stuck to this. It's like, you're not stuck to it. Like it's just, again, it's like I'm working towards this, and like it doesn't feel right. So I'll maybe go this way, see how it goes. But at least at the very least, I had somewhere to go, as opposed to looking at the blank page, which is terrifying. Like right. I need something down so I can make it better. Like for me, like I know people love the magic of drafting and seeing things. Like I can't. I'm like, this is so ugly. Why is anyone paying me to do this? Like I need it to be done so I can make it good. But again, like when people ask about like writer's block, like it's writer's block is you being a perfectionist, you being me, and you wanting every word on the page to look good. And that's not how writing works, which I know, and yet here I am every time. So plotting helps me break through that perfectionism, because I'm writing towards this thing. If it doesn't work, I can make it better, but at least I'm doing something, as opposed to like, I don't know, going down another like Twitter rabbit hole. So
I feel that. I feel like very similarly, I will start with an outline and a blueprint. I don't know if anyone read the book Story Genius. Love it. It was like that really actually helped me with this book. So I always start with like something, and I have the big scenes that I want, and like but there's always the moment where there's like this one scene that I like when I wrote the outline, I just always envisioned and thought was going to be so great, and then when it comes time to write it, it's like just not even remotely working the way that I thought it would. And then it's like, oh shit. So do I have to like throw out the entire story, or like, what do I do? And so like that happens, which can be a little frustrating. Cause so I think it's true that you can't be too married to your outline. Cause like if you haven't written, anything yet, there's really no way to know if it's going to unfold the way that you envision it in the outline. Writing is so weird. I don't know. Cause like I'll have an outline and I'll be like, this is totally a full book. Let me just do it. And like, I should be able to do it. But then like, once you start writing, there's just like, oh shit, I forgot about like this detail. And like, why would anyone do this? And who is this person even supposed to be? And like, why is there, a ex-boyfriend in this chapter when this person is supposed to, I don't know. There's just always something that happens. So hopefully, I mean, like I haven't mastered this at all. So hopefully someday I'll be able to like write just enough of an outline and then start and, merge the two.
Sometimes I think it's helpful at the beginning to be like, okay, I've decided to write a book about, for example, Grindr, like my, main character's cheating on Grindr. And then I think like, what are all the worst things that could happen in this scenario I've built? What are all the scariest things that could happen using Grindr? Kind of like what PJ was saying, like this could happen with the geolocation, so you kind of like think, and then you think, what Save the Cat has that promise of a premise thing they talk about. Like, what are the things you think someone might come into this excited to see? Like, for example, you're writing a book about a mummy. Well, you better bring that mummy to life. No one came to read a book or see a movie where a mummy just like lays there in its, little thing all day long. What are they called? Not a casket.
Sarcophagus.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a writer. I know a lot about it. I'm better with words. But you know what I mean? Like, so you think like, what are the promises here? What promises have I made the reader? Like if I said I'm going to write a book about a mummy, I better bring that mummy to life, and stuff like that. So it kind of, it helps me to sort of brainstorm at the beginning and be like, okay, what kinds of things do I need to write about? And then I'll start kind of like plugging into a plot.
Yeah. am exactly the same way. Definitely team, have kind of an idea, usually a concept, and some set piece or scene that I just want in there for no good reason other than I want it. I'm like, oh, they should get in a fight on a train or on an elevator, or a chandelier should fall down, like in Phantom of the Opera. I'm going to totally make that happen somehow. Like I try it every time because I'm obsessed with that.
Love it.
Like, why not? It's cool. It's probably not cool, actually, as the words come out of my mouth. But I don't know, like write first, get into trouble later. Like I won't sacrifice anything for story. And I also get in so much trouble later. So I create a bunch of work for myself, but I also I have ADHD. I have a short attention span. Tonight, medications off board. So I'm just gonna ramble and do whatever. I don't know. I have to feel like I'm surprised by the story and experience that like a reader might, to be able to determine if something's working for me or not. If I'm surprised by it, then maybe a reader will be surprised by it. And I figure we can just handle all the other facts and, shit later at some point.
So many times I'm like, this is a future Mia problem, where I'm just like, I'm gonna be like, bracket, insert clue, and I'm like, that's future Mia. She'll figure out what that means. It's like,
this is where I'm gonna win a Pulitzer.
Yeah, I'll literally insert clue, insert reaction, insert scene. One time I was like, I know what scene goes here, but I don't know what the connective tissue is. So future Mia can figure that out.
Insert act.
Yeah. Insert beginning, middle, and end every time. It's like beginning, end, insert act 2.
Current PJ just showed up here to sign a contract and tweet an announcement.
Seriously,
that's what he was here for. We'll figure it out later.
Current Nicholas is too busy scrolling Twitter to do anything.
No plot, just vibes. That's what we
want.
We love our vibes.
Just light the candle you think it smells like, and that's it. Because it's clothes, the clothing, the way you talk, you're like, that's it. And I'm like, come on, here for it.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So I want to hear about the research that you guys went through for your books, because I know some of you had to have Googled some very interesting things. So I want to know, what was the weirdest, what was the coolest thing you found, and what is, if an FBI agent were to look in your phone, what would make you look the most suspect?
Everyone's like,
I'm we're all on a watch list. We know that. We're all on a watch list.
Okay, but I'm coming from the historical era. I'm coming from 1926, which is 95. I can't do math. Whatever. It's how many ever years ago. So there's so many things that you have to research that you don't think you have to research. I was one day up at 1 a.m. of course, being when were styrofoam cups invented? I just looked up when the Murphy bed, the bed you pull from the wall, was invented. I needed it for a plot point. I also have a doctor brother, which is really handy when you do start writing murder mysteries, because I can text him and I could be like, so if I were to kill someone like this, how would that happen?
Oh, that is such a valuable
right. He is, I think, a little concerned. I'm definitely on a couple of watch lists, but because of him, I'm probably not as high. And I got really into old timey murders there for a bit, because I thrive off of old timey murders.
See, this is why I can never I love reading historical, but I can never write it, because I'm probably one of them I don't really love research that much. I'm just but which got me into trouble with this book, because I'm I don't know, it's considered small. It's fiction. I'll write it out and then research it later. Because in the past, I've had the problem of oh, let me stop and research that. Oh, and I just kept stopping and I would never move forward, which is a problem. So I was I'm gonna make a little comment to myself and tell myself to look at this later and then keep moving forward. Which in theory is good, but not if the thing you didn't research is a major plot point and clue where you were totally so. Yeah. So luckily, I only had written half of the book at this point. And I sent it to 2 beta readers, one who was a former lawyer, one who works as a pathologist. Both are crime writers. And I was like, hey, does this hold together? Because, like, you know, it was only the second thing I've ever written. I'm like, I don't know. Is this going anywhere? What do you think? And both of them screamed at me over like HIPAA violations. They're like, yeah, you can't just give out patient information. This woman would be so fired, like, immediately. And I was like, oh, patient privacy, you're right. Like, you can't just, like, give out. But, like, it's so, like, literally, like, the forward movement of the second act kind of hinged on her getting that bit of information, where I was just like, well, I guess I'm rewriting all of Act 2 then, you know, kind of thing. And, like, the worst part is my brother's a nurse. So like I could, like, if I had asked him, like, right, like, he would have been like, yeah, no, absolutely not. But like, I just like, I'll research this later, and then like wasted Lord knows how much time.
That's the moment where I feel like I would have been to my editor, can we just like make this a book where HIPAA doesn't exist, like a world where like, I
mean, it's a fictional town. It's like, I don't know, in this town HIPAA does not exist because we did not believe in it. Like,
and then then the editor shoots us down. But you know,
I know. Yeah. So like that very simple basic fact I did not research, but I researched like best way to kill a diabetic. Like how quickly do you die from a stomach stab wound? Like those got me on a list. Those I can tell you about, but that very, very minor, almost like common sense thing, didn't think about.
In your defense, that's a long death though. Because I've had to research that too. Those stomach.
Oh, it's just like, will this make sense? Do I have to draw this out? When would they arrive? Poisons, so many poisons.
Oh my god, I have a whole book on poisons. It's everything.
Okay,
love it.
I actually have an interesting story about this. So speaking of books, literally the shelf behind me. So I thought I was so smart because I did my research. I literally got criminology for dummies when I was writing this book. And I was like, because I kept Googling things like, you know, because there's a whole like crime procedural element to this. And so I was like, let me just like read criminology for dummies. That's all I'm going to need. And I was so proud of myself. Like when I had the draft and like all of my CPs and my beta readers were like, oh my God, this is like so good. I would have thought like you've literally been through all of this, like the whole criminal justice system. And even my editor like thought it was pretty good. And like, there were no big issues. And then when it got to copy edits, I was just completely like torn to shreds and I got so many things wrong. They were like, this would never go this way. Like no one can say this, like no lawyer is going to do this. Like the entire thing, just I had to like rewrite in copy edits, which was like when I thought everything was. So that was a fun journey. And so this book was not as helpful, or maybe I just didn't grasp it as well as I thought I did.
So like we said, it was for dummies.
Right. Like, I thought I couldn't go wrong, but alas.
I mean, you did well enough for like non-law people. I would have been like, dang,
I got to copy edit without anyone checking me. Like,
you bought the book. You held it up, and I was like, I didn't do that.
Right.
Sorry.
I had this one really awful thing I had to research. I was like, this takes it over the line, Wendy, where it was like, what's the melting temperature of like steel? And if I were to pour it onto a human, what would happen? Like there was this whole like, and if it was like this, like, and so I was just like researching this, like, this just keeps getting worse. Like, okay, what's the melting temperature? I just picture that Google's like, okay, sure, we'll tell you what the melting temperature is. And it's like, what if I poured it onto a person? They're like, okay, this seems to be safe. And then it was like, what happens to a person if this? And they were like, why? It just kept getting like worse and worse. What is there any way would a human turn into a liquid, or what would happen if? And I just picture like whoever's behind Google just being like, I don't want to tell her. Why are you asking?
So in your vision, Google is like a little person doing like
judgmental
for little Google.
Does everyone not personify Google?
It's like actually like that Ask Jeeves guy. Just there with like a cup of tea, like, oh
my God.
If he do it all British, he'd be like, oh dear.
I miss Jeeves.
I hope Jeeves is vibing.
Throwback.
I definitely didn't have to ask Jeeves about like gay anonymous sex stuff. So like research there, like it was like good to go.
You did research though. You did research.
I did. Yeah. I was extraordinarily committed. Like before I even knew I was
exhaustive.
I had it.
All serving.
We love that.
Exhaustive is a dangerous thing to say. It was not exhaustive. It was not exhaustive. Not in specifically that. But I did have to Google like if fentanyl was soluble in baby formula, and I feel like
why
is it
for book stuff? but as I was typing it out, I was just like, this is shady. This is weird. I don't have kids, and people are going to be like, but why not? Where are they?
Oh my god, that's a good one.
Right.
It is, I think so. Good. FYI, in case anyone's.
Oh, good, awesome.
All right, love that question and love those answers. So let's get to I guess another fun aspect of thrillers and crime, the reveal. Would you say what makes a good reveal or satisfying ending? Do you have the reveal at the end point or set before you begin to write it? And do you prefer neat and tidy or leave the readers wanting more at the end of the book?
You guys are all waiting for me, aren't you? You guys are all like, I was like, I'm not going to do it, but yeah, of course I'm going to do it. Okay.
It has to be you.
Yeah, right?
We're all looking at your grid square. Like
all you guys staring at me. So I guess I do like a good reveal, like a good solid reveal. I don't know why everybody thinks we need like a huge twist. If we just have a story that goes from point A to point B to point C, and I'm enjoying reading it, and I've enjoyed writing it, that's even better than something that comes out of left field in the last like 3 chapters. But I always like to put the reveal like a tiny bit before, so we have a bit of a cool down, so that also I can put those little plot points in for next book, because that's important. Keep reading. And yeah, so I think it's like Wendy said with like the roller coaster, it's like slowing down, and then like the complete stop is like the conclusion. But like we know everything, we know what happened, we know what's going on now, and we're ready for book 2.
Yeah, I agree with Nikasa. Like this is actually like a conversation I had with someone recently. I can't remember. I think it might have been like Amy Sitter Clark, where she had like a Twitter thread, like the difference between
that's what I was going to bring up,
twist and a reveal.
Yes,
and I was like, yeah, okay, that's perfect, because like I never thought of it in that way, but she was so right. And basically, you know, like the twist is like, oh wow, it came out of left field and it wasn't surprising. Whereas a reveal is like you were building up to it, and then like it all comes together. And so again, I write straight like mystery, and for me, the reveal is more important. And I don't necessarily need like a big explosive reveal. I need a somewhat tidy and satisfying. So, I mean, people who might have read my book might not find it completely tidy at the end, shall we say? I'm not going to say too much, but there is a conclusion, that wraps up the big important parts, but also leaves the next step open because it's a series, and I need y'all to buy book 2, please. I kind of need to keep going with this. I mean, like, again, a twist is appreciated when it's really, really well done. But now so many people expect a twist that, like, when just like a good reveal happens, they're like, that's not a twist. I'm like, it wasn't supposed to be. Like, what? Like, I don't, you know, I keep picturing, like, I think, you know, like this could be like when you pull off like, oh, it was Old Man Winter's all like, I wasn't trying to set that up. Why did you think that's what I needed? Like, what in any of this made you think there was going to be huge? Like, no, there was a mystery. And she solved it. Like, that's all I needed. That's what I was trying to do. But I don't know. What were you saying, Wendy? Like, I think you were also going to bring up the Amy Clark.
I was just excited because when you said it, I had been a second ago, like going on Twitter, making sure I was remembering her quote right. And then you said it, and I was like, excitement. Yeah. But yeah, she said there's a difference between a twist and a reveal. The twist is when you don't see coming, right? And it's supposed to be like, whoa, out of left field. And then the reveal is when you could have guessed it. Don't be mad if you guessed it. It just means you're a good detective. Don't yell at us on social media if you guessed it. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I never thought of it like that, but that was a really cool way to put it.
Reveals are like, I love them and I love writing them, but the challenge I have is that, like, especially in early drafts, I feel like I just give it away like a million times, like early on, and then like repeatedly like dropping like the least subtle hints whatsoever. It's like I really just want to like, I guess I do it for myself more than anything, just to like make sure like you have to follow through on this. And then like when I go back and edit, I'm just like, wow, this was literally like a 5-year-old could have read my gay crime spree book and figured out what the ending is. So that's always the thing for me, is like after, you know, once it's written, being like, okay, how do I actually make this so it's like interesting and not just completely giving it away in like chapter 2.
I think like on the whole like Amy tweet thing, I don't know if I write twists or reveals after reading that because I'm like, oh, I'm so twisty all the time. And I read that and I was like, I don't know what I do. Maybe I just reveal lies, like, you know, unfold. But I do try to think about like, I had a friend of mine in town who's a freelance editor, and she was like, she used this phrase, and I don't know where it came from or if it was hers or pulled from elsewhere. I should have looked it up before I started saying it. But like she called it like the third way. And I think about it a lot. So like to use like an example most folks might know, like with the Gone Girl, like what's the most obvious thing that happened? Well, the most obvious thing that happened was that like Nick murdered his wife and was cheating, whatever. And that's great Act 1 stuff. Well, what would be the less obvious like second way? Okay, well someone else, you know, murdered her, who and why not, and that's great red herring meat as well. But like, what would be the third way? Like an unexpected like 3 levels of thinking, hopefully on the reader's part, you know, to suss out like, well, what could that possibly be? And I don't know. I feel like that's a way I sort of organize my plots around well, what's really going on.
Yeah,
I like that. That's really cool.
That's so clever.
I know. I wish I could credit someone for it. My friend read it somewhere and told me. Hey.
I read it, so, you know, basically like make a list of things that could possibly happen and like basically throw out that first one, because like that's like, if it's the first one, that's the most obvious thing. It's like, well, who possibly killed them? It's like, well, you know, the husband did it, or and then like, okay, yeah, it's yes, yeah, oh, and then like over here is when it starts to get interesting. You know, the further you list. So. As long as, again, you make it pay off. Because if you're just like, that guy that was standing in the background in like chapter 3, do you remember him? And I'm just like,
Right.
You did not. You did not. I don't even remember that guy's name. You brought him up so long ago. How dare you? You know,
you dropped the mail off. Like
the postal carrier did it. Yeah, I think you guys really did just help me clear up some plot problems I'm having. So thank you. I'm excited to write tonight now.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about tropes. There's so many out there, from the lie to the whodunit, the unreliable narrator, everyone's suspect. Do you think, or what are your favorite tropes, and do you use any of them in your book? And what did you do to make yours kind of stand out?
It's gonna be me again, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, all my favorite tropes are like romancy tropes, like, oh, there's only one bed, and it's sweet cousin, there's only one shower. Enemies to lovers, I love. I just love all like the classic like Hallmark movie, like, oh, we hate each other, and by the end of this movie, we're gonna fall in love tropes. So I don't really I don't get the chance to like put them in my gritty dark mysteries, just because like that doesn't make sense. But I'd love to write like a spy thriller that has all of my favorite tropes, just because it has all of my favorite tropes. Watch for that. I'm so excited. I feel like tropes could be really helpful, just because, especially because I write historical, there's so many ways you can like twist them and turn them and kind of change them, because like, oh, smartphones didn't exist. So this person is slacking someone off in the newspaper every day in their newspaper article. So things like that. I do love a trope. Love a good trope. Trope fan.
I mean, same. I mean, literally my entire first page is me like leaning into the fact that cozy mysteries are basically rom-coms. It's just like, oh, surprise, girl from a small town moves to the city and can't hack it. Okay, check, you know, has to move back home, has to save the family business and or the community center and or discover the true meaning of Christmas and or so like those tropes are there for a reason. They're there to have fun with. Unfortunately, like Nikessa, I also really love romance tropes. I'm like, the day I can figure out a way to fit in fake dating in my murder mystery, I'm like, oh, someday.
Yes.
But so far, not yet. So again, like the first part is me kind of playing with it, which is again like, I described my protagonist as tragically straight because I'm like, oh, what? Like, who would this person be thinking she's living this Hallmark life? Oh, she'd be like so. But then as I'm working on book 2, I'm like, what is she? So like, stay tuned. I mean, like, that's how I found out I was queer. I was like, well then, maybe time will tell, So she starts out Hallmark and then she quickly, who knows? Who knows where this is going? Yeah.
I'm another one where I feel like the biggest trope for me is a rom-com trope in my book, which is basically just like the nice guy versus the asshole or the bad boy struggle, which I feel like is a trope of life. Not, like not that all men are like so two-dimensional, but sometimes it is, that's just the struggle. So I feel like kind of like my entire book is kind of about, how do you wrestle with that and how do you, come to a place where you're making the right choice, which is a very rom-com-y arc, but, it's a trope that I will never get sick of.
I like the bad bisexual. I know I'm not supposed to like the bad bisexual, but I love the bad bisexual. I'm like, yes, make him even worse. Make her the worst. It's my favorite
Ursula.
thing.
Not that Ursula's bi, but maybe.
She totally is. I mean, thanks. She's a queer icon, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
All those tentacles.
Mm-hmm.
in my head, I'm like, abort, don't go there. Don't go there.
Right. Wait, I don't even know what I meant by that.
No, keep going.
How about you, PJ?
I thought I knew what a twist was until recently. So I'm not sure if I know what a trope is. It turns out. I feel like I don't know. Like I don't know if this is a trope necessarily, but I'm really into people, particularly people who care about each other, whether it's like some sort of relation, like couple, like romance or friends or whatever, are lying to each other and being dishonest with each other in the way that we always are. And that it would just be so easy if two people would just sit at a table and say, this is what's bothering me, and this is why. How does that make you feel? And we never do. It's so hard.
Clear communication, PJ.
Well, no, not having it in the book.
Oh,
is my favorite trope. Like where they're not doing that. Oh yeah, if that's the lens you were listening, like yeah, no, that would be the worst book ever. Favorite trope is
it would be a short book.
Yeah, they're well adjusted. There's like an inciting incident. They come together and then they decide that they'll just go navigate around it, and it's fine because they're doing it together, which is really what Bathhouse is about as well.
There you go.
Oh, sorry. One other trope that I really love, I think that maybe like connect a lot, is like found family, which I think is definitely like, because like I write a lot about family because I am close to my own family, but there's something about the idea of like people who may have people who love them in their life, maybe they don't, but they find the ones that they choose to keep in their life for reasons, and they support each other in that way. And like every time I'm just like, like I'm like ugly crying over, like these teens finding people who truly understand them and stuff like that. I love found family stuff.
Yeah. It's life-saving.
Yeah.
And very pride appropriate.
Yeah. I feel like yes, I feel like a lot of queer people understand like, yes, that family who supports them, understands them, and accepts them for who they are. How refreshing.
How lovely.
Okay, well, so let's talk about the queerness in the genres. So there's very few queer-led mysteries or thrillers. A lot of times we'll see that these genres are predominantly cis white men or women. I'm curious, is there a queer thriller or mystery that you've read before you wrote your own?
I don't think I've ever actively realized I was like, oh, I'm reading like a queer mystery. I do know that I think my queer bookshop, that's also a cafe that I miss dearly because we're in the middle of a Panda Express, has they have like a whole section of just like lesbian detectives. I think I haven't been there a while, but I'm pretty sure, and that sounds amazing. Like my book would be stuck there. How amazing! But like, I don't know how or why Lou turned out to be gay, but I knew that's something I really wanted to focus on, especially because I just finished writing a straight romance when I started writing this book, and I was like, this is so not what I want. I want to see lesbians, and I want to see Flapper lesbians specifically. I'm pretty chaotically ADHD. I just think of one thing and then I do it for the rest of my life. So I think that Lou's identity is so important to her. Like her little family around her is so important to her, and it's just like a part of her, and it's like who she is. And like I couldn't take that away from her and have her be the same person because it's just not possible.
So I'm going to speak. So I think my experience is probably a little bit maybe different than most others. So I realized I was queer much later in life. As I was writing my first novel. This is my second novel. As I was writing my first novel, which is also a mystery. It was a murder mystery that took place at a comic book convention, and I thought that there had to be like a love story with the victim, who was this dude, and the people who were reading it was like, it's not working for me. I'm like, it's not working for me either, and I couldn't figure out why. So like, I was like, future Mira, that's your problem. Let's move to the next scene. Mm-hmm. And I wrote the scene where she meets her idol, who she loves, she was basically like the yellow Power Ranger. Like, I'm not gonna lie, right? So I wrote that scene, and I knew that character was gonna be a lesbian because it was important. Like, I always knew that, but that character my protagonist was originally straight. But as I was writing the interaction of her meeting her idol, like I was like, is she flirting with her? Huh. Okay, all right, I'm just gonna roll with this because it felt so much more natural than it was writing the previous one. And then I was like, oh, is she bi? Well, maybe. And I write, and I'm here pouring my soul into this book, and then later I was just like, oh shit, am I bi? And it was like a real I was like, y'all, I was on a roller derby team, and it took me until I wrote this book to find out that I was, you know what I mean? I was like, there were so many things. I was just like, oh, like these weird flashbacks where it all starts connecting, and you're just like, holy crap. But it literally took me writing that first book to kind of figure things out. And I was really lucky because we're talking about queer detectives. So Kristen Lepianka, who writes the Roxanne Weary PI series, who is a messy bi. She was kind of reading it. She was just like, yeah. And I was talking to her. I was like, hey, I know you can't diagnose this, but do you think? Maybe she was just like, well, there's not one way to be queer, and this, and that, and it's like, I'm just like, holy crap, and so fiction has been helping me kind of explore and learn more about my identity, and so having access to the Roxanne Weary series, and then finding out later about Cheryl Head, who writes a Black lesbian I was like, holy crap, these worlds were opening up to me after this, and I was just like, I can't believe these things are all here. Renee James writes an excellent the Bobby Logan is a trans woman, kind of amateur sleuth. I mean, not an amateur sleuth as in in my stories where this is a dumb cookie baker who keeps stumbling upon dead bodies. This is a trans woman who is having these dangerous situations forced on her, and so she has to kind of deal with it. So these worlds were opening up to me as I was learning about myself and just learning how to write a book. It was really interesting, I should say.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's awesome, by the way.
Thanks. But it was so weird. I'm like, why am I asking her as if I need a stamp? But I feel like that's a lot of people who are newly queer, especially if you're bi and you went your whole life thinking one way and then realizing, oh, there's a spectrum that exists and there's no one right way. weird to learn that at 30, you know?
I wish I would like I now as an adult I get to enjoy like Cheryl Head, like Michael Nava. Like if I had these sorts of stories as a kid, I didn't have access to them. It's whatever was on like the Walmart, shelf when I was like shopping with my mom, or whatever. That's what I had access to. And that's why like now when I walk through a public library and I see like the kinds of stories that are on the shelves, like it breaks my heart a little. Like I'm so happy and like so encouraged by it, but I'm like, holy shit, it would have meant to me to just have access to these sort of stories. And it doesn't need to be some sort of like traumatic memoir where it's mining someone's personal experiences of all the horrible things that have happened to them, but an airport trade paperback, any of y'all's books, are life changing, and you can't underestimate the power that has. I think so to go in sort of a different direction, because I didn't have that book. I think about, obviously there was like Will and Grace and like Will Truman, and we can, and I appreciated that, show so much because it, I would be watching it with like some like straight, country as hell friend. And if he laughed at like some zinger about Jack bottoming, then I'd be like, oh, this guy's safe. Like he might not hurt me if he knew who I was, if he's like genuinely appreciating this sort of joke. And so I love that. But Will made me feel really messy. Like talking about messy. So like my apartment doesn't look like that. I don't dress like that. I'm not all these different things. But I had a different show kind of at the same time, Desperate Housewives. And there was this like tertiary, maybe like secondary character, Andrew Vandekamp. He's this like the son of Bree, the perfect, obsessive compulsive sort of housewife on the show. And his bedroom looked like mine. He was my age. And like his idea of revenge was like Cruel Intention style monstrosity of like seducing Bree's sex addicted boyfriend just to get back at her. And so I would watch that and I'm like, I don't feel messy, at all right now. And there was something really liberating and thrilling, like Wendy, what you were saying about, I know like we're not supposed to want, these kind of characters, but like, why not? Like, you know what I mean? And so seeing a character like that to me kind of sparked a love for those kind of stories and not necessarily, love Will Truman, love him. Will, you're great. But Andrew was fun.
I can't really remember any like stories with queer. Like I started reading mysteries really young, but I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but like I didn't delve too deeply into the bookshelves. I would just like go to used bookstores and get whatever was there, or I would just like kind of read whatever was around. But I don't really think I knew many queer stories in this genre till I was like an adult writing books, and then I had like recommendations. I realized I could like go online and start searching and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would echoing the whole love of the of Bree's son. It wasn't a book, but it was like I guess the like print version of the play 6 Degrees of Separation. I don't know if anyone has ever read or seen that, but that starred like a very messy, manipulative, like kind of sociopathic gay teen. And I was just obsessed in high school. Like I had that little paperback of that play and I like read it cover to cover like several times. And I was like, it was just, and it like, not that I was like idolizing the fact like him, but it was just really cool to see this like super, smart character who was openly gay and using his gayness as a way, almost as like a weapon in certain cases, and similar, like, seducing people and all of these things. So I feel like that was a character that really resonated with me. And then obviously, like I said earlier, all of those single mom and daughter tales. So I'm very happy that I can finally put one out that is the single mom and the gay son.
I had this fascination with Dr. Frankenfurter as a kid. I like loved Dr. Frankenfurter. And then my daughter has this friend who I'm like, think she's bi, but like we'll see. And then she came to us and she was like, "Have you guys seen Rocky Horror? I love Dr. Frankenfurter." I was like,
I turned the channel so fast it was like I was watching porn. I was like, no, I'm not watching that.
I loved her.
Oh, that's so good.
I know.
Okay. And why do you guys think it's taken so long for queer thrillers to kind of make it more mainstream? I mean, it's only almost half the year, but I feel like I've seen so many queer thrillers back to back to back than I did maybe even just a year ago. So why do you think now we're doing it more?
I think it's because we're like kind of voting with your wallets type thing. Like we see it on the shelves and then we buy it. So then publishing is like, oh, they want more of this queer thriller, and they just want to see more of that. So they're gonna like capitalize on it, which Big Daddy Publishing, please don't take my contract away. But it's true. Like I feel like I'm kind of like in a very precarious position because I'm Black. I'm like writing a Black like lesbian like character, and like I always thought that there'd be 3 people max who want to read that. That's apparently not true. Apparently there's lots of people. And like I didn't really know until I got this contract. And it's like, oh my God, people want to read this. So I think it's just getting the word out more. Us buying the books that are like the books we want to see, and then publishing being like, oh yeah, we'll buy more of those.
Well, also just being like very vocal about it, because you know in the past they knew, but they could probably pretend that they didn't. It was like, oh yeah, people aren't buying the book, so nobody wants this. Obviously, it's like, well, did you I don't know, market it so that people know the book existed?
To do some publicity.
Yeah, it's like, did you put it in fiction as opposed to like gay lesbian studies? Like where like it's not. It's again, it's a murder mystery. What are you studying in there? Why would it be shelved in that area?
Right.
Ghettoized as opposed to just be put into a regular mystery thriller fiction, that kind of thing. But people, for better or worse, are being very vocal about what they expect to see in their media. And I guess, publishing is a business, and they are seeing us as a trend. Instead of just that we exist and have always existed and should maybe kind of widely support this, but whatever, they finally say oh wow, gays are hot right now, so let's put some money into it, and hopefully we will not go the way of vampires and dystopian thrillers, that they'll realize that there's staying power, that there are readers who want this, and they'll just kind of keep supporting it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it has nothing to do with the readership whatsoever. I think the readership's always there. It's what folks are putting on the shelves, exactly like you just said, and what's available. At some point, when I was talking about Bathhouse and shopping, I was told secondhand, Costco moms won't buy this book, so no. And I'm like, well, you're not a Costco. I appreciate $5 crunchy peanut butter just like everyone else that shops at Costco, and so that's really bold of you to speak on behalf of them. And these are busy human beings who that's the opportunity that they have that day to buy a novel, and so they're going to buy what's on that table. It has nothing to do with them. It's what you think. Who's in the C-suite, what white cis straight male is in that C-suite making those decisions on behalf of people that they really have no ability to speak for. Don't take my contract away also. It's true. And when these stories get out there, where are the awards, right? Where are they falling? Where are they being awarded to? What are the bottom lines looking like? And that business case builds itself because they're good stories. And now that there's a business case, I hope at least that, sustains it, because the right thing to do usually isn't what does.
Right. It blows my mind that, and I feel like all of us, let's say if we were pitching these books, even just 10 years ago, a common kind of line from agents and editors used to literally be this is a good story, but have you considered maybe just making it straight, changing the protagonist to being straight? That blows my mind that we were there. I mean, I've only been, I started, I guess, querying my first book in 2012. So I mean, it hasn't even been 10 years. And I've gotten notes like that before where it was like, you know, this is like a little too much with the gayness. Like maybe it would actually resonate with a wider audience if, you know, it was a little straighter, which is just crazy because like, it's not like every reader needs to, you know, identify fully with who they're reading. Like the whole point of reading is that you don't. A lot of the time. I mean, sometimes the point is that you do, and that's really beautiful and great. But sometimes it's like, all right, you know, I'm going to just be in someone else's head and see what that's like. And so, yeah, I really do think it's crazy that like it took this long to get here. But yeah, like you guys said, hopefully.
And the thing is that like we've been expected to relate to like these straight, like in my case, definitely like white characters forever. Like I grew up in this province called Alberta, which is very, very white. And like those were like the books I was getting. It's like, oh, white people, oh, white people, oh, white people. So now I don't have to relate to like these. And like if I'm doing the legwork of like relating to your characters and all of your books and all of your TV shows and all of your movies, why can't you take 10 seconds to think about a different perspective? Please just take 10 seconds.
And like you're saying 10 years, like within the last 5 for sure. My first book had a queer Filipino. It's like Filipino and queer. So many boxes that you're checking. And she's a millennial. Histories are like I literally had someone say like, ooh, our readership is like, you know, older white women who are straight, and you are writing a queer Filipino. Like you're just checking every box. And I'm just like, that's because that's who I am. Like I don't like I'm not checking, but like it's called being intersectional. Like it exists,
right?
You know, and like Nikita said, it's just like so you can identify with like you know aliens and wizards and like literal anthropomorphic animals, but because I have more melanin than you, suddenly you're like, what is this? I don't get it. What's happening?
Too many boxes.
It's just like, oh, this is so unrealistic. So unrealistic. Also another coded word that gets thrown around. So yeah,
it's unrealistic. Heard that one a few times.
Right.
Yeah. Just a few years ago, like one of the passes for Bathhouse, like they had published like literally a fictionalized memoir that just that was gay, and that was it. That was the overlap. and they like had just published something just like this.
Oh, God. I mean, I've had that, like, oh, we already have our one. Like, I've heard that, but like, dang, that's nonfiction. It's like not even. Oh.
It gets back to what you're saying. It's like, but like Sauron is fine. Like Sauron, you got it, no problem. You relate, it fits in the story, no problem. But if there's
like white European mythology, oh, give me like every single one, like 10,000 a year. But like that one, I don't know.
So when you're writing your books, how did the queerness and queer identity function in your storytelling? Do you think your LGBT characters navigate these stories differently than cis straight characters?
So I'm writing in 1926, where it's like not even like just kind of taboo to be gay; it's straight up illegal to be gay. So Lou really had to like hide that part of herself. She like lives across the hall from her girlfriend. They have all these like very small, very subtle acts of intimacy while they're in public because that's all they can manage and that's all they can do. And I think it's very important for her to be gay because, of course, gay people existed back then. They didn't just suddenly exist in the 1990s, I think, when Will and Grace started to air. I don't think I was born then. And like, I think being like gay has been so like integral to like her like life and her story, because it's just like another factor of discrimination. Oh, she's Black. Oh, she's a woman. Oh, she's gay. And it also gives her like some secrets, something to hide, and like something to be like, listen, I can trust you with this. I'm this, and yeah. So please don't take me to jail.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit hard because again, like my protagonist is straight, possibly for now. But like her best friend is a lesbian, and she's also Asian. She's South Asian. She's Pakistani Muslim, and I think again, for me, obviously, like the intersectionality of it, right? Because you know, you can be multiple things at once, and so I wanted I wanted the character to be queer, but that's not the source of the conflict with her family, right? She's like, you know, like it's kind of the thing. It's like, yes, we know you're gay, it's fine, but that doesn't mean you can't marry a nice man and have babies. It's just like, it kind of does. She's like, no, it's like, it's, you know, we accept you, we love you, but you know, it's also just like, you know, it's more, it's like, well, one, like they want grandkids, and also two, it's again being very stereotypically Asian. It's like the career choice, you know. So like her best friend is like a budding pharmacologist, but she wants to quit and be like a barista and run a cafe. And they're like, you want to just make coffee? Like your brother's a lawyer. You're studying to be a pharmacist. You can have a degree and have a good job, and you just want to what? Not have babies and not do medicine? You know, like, so it was important to me that you can see how it's a part of her character, but it's not the conflict, right? Just like you can be a person of color and that's not the conflict, though the conflict, like there will be natural conflicts because of that. You can be queer and it's not like a tragedy, but of course there are still little microaggressions and things that happen. So I included it in that way. So, and then, you know, I'm sure soon, the more books I write in the series, like the queerer that town becomes, and I'm like, I am not going to apologize because yeah, right. So I like, this is a fictional town. You cannot tell me who this demographic is that lives there. So here we go. All right.
It is a town that's 99% gay people.
I mean, okay, so it makes sense that someone dies, like someone is murdered in this tiny town, like every week. And that's totally believable. It's okay that this filmmaker is solving murders like on the reg. That's totally fine. But the fact that 3 gay people exist in the same town, that's too much for you? Come on. You know? So I wanted to write a world where just like, yeah, if you think you don't know gay people, they just didn't feel safe enough to tell you. We're everywhere, people.
I feel like queerness in mine is like, it's weird. I feel like on the one hand, it's like one of the biggest parts of it. And like, I am literally always describing this as like a very gay book. And because of, you know, one of the main characters who's the son in this mother-son duo, you know, is gay. But then after like that basic kind of fact, I feel like the queerness is also in a way kind of incidental because you know, he's dealing with the same exact thing that his mother is dealing with. And she's, you know, a cisgender straight woman who dates men. And so in a way, I'm like always kind of both sides on this question. I'm like, queerness is everything to this book, but then also it's really nothing at all. And it's just someone who happens to be attracted to toxic people. So yeah, I don't think that was a great answer, but.
No, I was thinking as you were talking, because I've had 2 queer books, like I've had 2 books with queer female protagonists. And in the first one that came out, it was like a super source of conflict. Like it was a big problem in her life. It created a lot of issues for her. And in the second one, it's incidental. It's just part of the plot. And it creates almost, you know, very little conflict. And I think, but that's how it is for us. Sometimes our queerness creates a lot of conflict in our lives. And we have these moments that are like shockingly, all of a sudden, it's like creating this horrible amount of conflict in this moment that you weren't expecting. And then other times it's just fine. And it's just kind of fades into the background and becomes incidental. So I think,
right,
you know, there's, you know, those things exist in our life at the same time, sometimes in the same day.
That's so true.
I with like Bathhouse, like I had this interesting thing that happened when I was drafting it. I belonged to this writing group, and you know, not necessarily like with just friends, but just an organization had a writing group that we would sit around and exchange chapters. And the book opens with you know, someone getting almost murdered while they're cheating in a bathhouse, and the white straight man at the table was like, this is so unbelievable. You know, the character runs out. He wants to escape as quickly as possible. He doesn't want to tell like, you're almost murdered and you don't want to report anything. You don't want to tell anyone where you were for all sorts of different reasons. But he's like, this is unbelievable. He just fled. Like, this guy tried to do something. Like, why aren't they fighting? Why aren't they like, why isn't he? And I'm like, yeah, I guess this is a different story. And yeah, I guess people do navigate, these sorts of plots and conflict differently. And, it was a deliberate choice. It's like, where could you be almost murdered and want to keep it secret because of the shame and the loss of control and all of that stuff, which isn't right, but it's the way I would feel in a situation like that. Absolutely.
All right, one last question. I hope this one's nice and fun for you guys. If you could tell any classic mystery or thriller with queer characters, what would it be and why?
Okay. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think what I settled down on is Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot, but gay, totally gay, very gay.
He seems really gay.
Yeah, like already,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely. You're so right.
Maybe a half to one of his books, but like he just sounds good. He just seems it. So I really feel like he should be.
We all did read a queer mystery, it turned out.
Mine is Sherlock and Watson. I want them together. I want a sex scene. I want the whole thing.
I think I'm really basic. I'm gonna say like Rebecca, because like I feel like that tension's like kind of already there. And I don't know, like I feel like, was it Mrs. Danvers? She was in love with Rebecca, right? And the narrator hasn't even met that woman, because obviously she's at the beginning. But like at the same time, I'm just like, she has some weird yearning, and I just feel like there's just some like, it's not even subtext, people. It's text. Like I feel like it's so easy. I can just be like, wow, like I'm just like changing names. Like I'm not even like really like messed with the plot that much. This is pretty all right. Like that definitely would be a lot of fun.
So this is like thriller, but maybe cheating a little bit because it's also kind of horror-y. But I'm gonna say The Shining. I feel like a gay Jack Torrance and like husband, and then maybe like their dog in the Overlook Hotel. I feel like that would be an unraveling like trip that I would just really be so interested in seeing. So yeah, that's mine. Or reading rather.
I'll cheat because there already are queer characters in this. I would totally do like a retelling of like the Ottoman siege of Constantinople, which I do not have the like skill set to do. To the people who can write historical fiction here and all of that research, I'm like, if it's not in a Honda, I can't describe it. But like that's got like Dracula's brother, who was a lover of Mehmed the Conqueror. Like they were together and like sacking, Rome finally to, like, wow, that seems pretty cool. They use cannons for the first time. I read on Wikipedia. Like, that seems like a pretty cool story, I feel like, for whoever could somebody write that.
I feel like you're very pointedly looking at me. I know. Like I'm thinking in front of camera.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. Where can people find out more about you and your books?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, mostly Twitter, because I like to say every thought I've ever had. Nekesa Afia, Nekesa Afia. And my book, Dead Dead Girls, you can buy it where books are sold, more than likely. I don't know if they're stalking.
I'm at Twitter at CT Nicholas, no H in Nicholas, I always have to say. And then Instagram at Nick Dinamizio Books. And this is in stores now. Ooh. I just said that.
Okay. I'm Wendy Hurd. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Wendy D. Hurd, and you can buy She's Too Pretty to Burn. Places, I don't know. Online there. Pandemic.
I'm Mia P. Manansala. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MPM, so just like my initials, MPM the writer. And you can pick up Arsenic and Adobo where books are sold, theoretically. If you want to know for sure and want to support some indies, Murder by the Book has signed book plates as well as the book table in Oak Park, Illinois. You can get personalized copies if you order from them. So there you go.
What was the? It was. This is my book, and it's available where books are sold. June 15th.
Where can we find you online?
Oh, yeah. On Twitter and Instagram at pjvernonbooks.com. No, not .com. At pjvernonbooks is where you can find me. Thank you.
I like both the @ and the .com. just all of it.
No one knows where I am.
.edu.
I mean, Bathhouse is nonfiction, right? Like that was your memoir.
It was absolutely completely autobiographical from start to finish. It's not like I just took low stakes things that happened in my life and just put them in there and made my reaction appropriate with murder.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone who joined in. My name is Eric. You can find me on Instagram at @theboywiththeraven tattoo. Thank you again so much for joining us for the first ever Pride Book Fest 2021. Good night. See you guys next year.
Thank you, Eric.